Good morning. We can try that.
So,
That'd be better.
good morning.
Yeah.
Stay away from sickness. That's all I gotta say.
Yes. Amen.
the moment.
Stay away from me if you're sick.
I am. We're good now. We're good.
I always get
Who?
nervous.
No, I'm just kidding. I want to start with just something from the message yesterday.
Yeah.
Is this idea of
Wasn't Les Parrott awesome?
Yes.
Like just all weekend long, I think just such practical, helpful, useful,
Yeah.
like tangible handles kind of thing. Handles that you can go out and do something with and good stuff.
And yesterday he talked a little bit about nobody can complete you.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask maybe just a little bit of like your perspective on that process of, I don't know if wholeness is necessarily the goal. That's more of a lifelong process
Exactly.
in a lot of ways. So what does that look like before we engage in relationships? Like,
Is there a line like
yeah.
you're done, you're good? I mean, you're good enough to have a relationship. I don't know if it's like, like I would just say because it is a continual process, there has to be that continual commitment to like, I'm going to continue. And the reality is getting into a relationship, I think, is actually going to trigger and expose some of those unhealthy areas in your life.
Mm.
Yeah. Selfishness, lack of patience, which if you go into like the marriage relationship, I think is where we talk about it, marriage makes you whole, is meant to make you holy, not happy. It's that's the process is like, it's going to continually expose things in you at every season and every age that you have to deal with. But having said that, I do think there's a time you shouldn't be in relationships.
Mm.
I would say that I'd say flip it around and go, is there a time that I should choose not to be in? And if, I think health attracts health and I think unhealth attracts health. If you are in a deeply, and again, I hate to say unhealthy like it's a flawed thing because I think if, we all have flaws, we all have issues. And
Right.
I would just say, are those issues so like in the forefront of your struggle that they're going to become an immediate, incredible jealousies, lack of trust, you know what I mean? No self-control, there are some major components of health in us that if they're not addressed, they will immediately negatively impact a relationship.
Yeah.
And so I would say this: are there times, do I have to get to a certain point to be in a relationship? Well, maybe. I mean, but I would say this: maybe there's a time to go, I don't need a relationship right now as an added complication that I'm going to, if you're a people pleaser and you get into a relationship, everything becomes about pleasing that partner, that other person, And so it would expose that in you. But if I love the statement that he made yesterday, or actually made it Friday, and I asked him about it, was awareness is curative. And I think that's so powerful. Like if you are aware of what's going on, then that's the first step to going, okay, I'm going to start naming this, addressing this, changing the thinking and that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that, I think you're far better off having a high level of commitment to your own. And again, I think that goes back to studying out, considering, the Holy Spirit showing you things, but family of origin through family, why do I have curiosity? Why do I tend to respond this way? Why am I a jealous person?
Yeah.
Because jealousy is often connected to like a deeper longing in somebody for something else, So, I think that the healthier you are, the better off you're going to be in a relationship. And even still, nobody is healthy, wholly healthy.
Yeah.
Everybody's got issues. And I think different seasons and different pressures will expose those at higher levels. I know in my own life, like, it's just like, you get married, that's one thing. Now you got this person you're living life with. Then you have a kid, and you have 2 kids for us. So you have 3 kids, 4 kids. And while you kind of learn to adapt and normalize, there's a level of pressure in moments that shows up. Kids are keeping you up all night, sickness.
Yeah.
You're fatigued, you're tired. It's going to come out in that moment.
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity to go, wait a minute. Like, I can manage this as long as I'm not fatigued or under stress or whatever. But eventually life will bring that. And so health allows us to address that regardless of external circumstances. But even then, it still shows up, and we still, this is a lifelong, journey, I think, that we have to be on. And at some point, like he said, iron sharpens iron. Relationships, I know my wife has contributed incredibly to the health in my life.
Yeah.
Sometimes by calling me on my junk and just going like, hey, one of the best ones I think for her was like at the point where one day she stopped, participating in my commiseration and about something. And she's like, okay, well, that's yours to deal with. That is something you're going to have to work for. And I'm here to help however I can. But I'm not going to own that. I'm not going to pick that up. And it's put it forcefully back in my lap to go,
yeah,
okay, what are we going to do now? Am I going to get mad at her?
Yeah.
Yeah, for 30 seconds. Well, and then I go, no, it's not that she doesn't care. She's just setting a good, healthy boundary that she's saying it's time for you to be a big boy and deal with your stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm here to help you,
Yeah.
and, but nobody else can, nobody else. It's interesting. If you could get to the place in life, I heard a guy say recently, all of your problems, this is a pretty strong statement, all of your problems they're not external, they're internally driven. Because if I have a problem from the outside, if I can see it as a gift and go, what is the gift in this? My wife can say, you're on your own, big boy. And I can go, well, the gift in this is, number one, we're not enmeshed. Number two, she trusts me to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
Number three, she is there to help. Number four, I take responsibility for my own, spiritual development, emotional development, relational development. Instead of just getting mad at her and thinking she's my problem, which is what we do. We think everything outside is the problem. And really the problem always originates as a response to whatever happens. You've seen some people that like crazy stuff happens and they just hang with it and get through it. And you're just like, man, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And it's because they've learned how to address this internal sort of, problem solving issue versus blaming everything outside.
And what would you say is the role of the spouse in the context of marriage for each other? How do you have grace with each other, help each other, maybe not even help, but just support each other in their own health journey of getting to this place of,
Well, the longer I do this marriage and ministry and pursuit of health, wellness, that empathy thing is so massive. And if you have a high achieving, INTJ, ENTJ on the disc, an 8 on the Enneagram, a 3, if you have those personalities, empathy is typically the weakest muscle you have. Because here's why. Because you are
she's laughing.
Because I'll just turn this way. It's because you right. So we have a guest audience today. You are weakest, and I'm there. So I'm talking to myself. But and Caitlin, we're talking to each other. But you are the weakest at empathy. And here's why. There's a reason, literally. And it makes total sense when you get it. Like you've been hard on yourself to get results. Right? And it's worked.
Yeah.
On some level.
Right.
It does work temporarily. Like you've all right, man, suck it up, go at it. And so you have these things we do work for a season until they don't. You know what I mean? Until we go from like being on our health, hard on ourselves to get something done. And then we're just beating ourselves up and going nowhere and living in the shame and condemnation and guilt and all this. So what I would say is, I think that empathy piece is massive in a relationship. Instead of fixing, solving, and it's so tiresome and hard work when you first learned it. Like, because you're like, I don't want to empathize. I just want to tell you what to do and tell you to just go fix your junk, which is that hard driving personality.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this. There's a caveat to this. What they are finding is empathy doesn't solve everything. And I think this is true. This is the struggle, I think, of the Gen Z, younger millennials at times, is they just want a tremendous amount of empathy. They want a lot of support without challenge. And you got to have them both.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When my wife looks at me and goes, I'm here for you, that's in the empathy. Like, I know this is hard for you. I know this is difficult.
Yeah.
you're gonna have to figure I trust you. And she didn't put it on me like you're gonna figure it out. She'd be like, I trust you to figure this out, and you'll include me. So there was a high support,
Yeah.
I empathize, and a high challenge that says, and I trust you to work it out. I look forward to seeing how you come out of this.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, when you have high support and high challenge, then it puts you authorized agency, like, okay, which actually makes you feel like an adult instead of a kid.
Yeah.
Like, okay, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And then I think in a marriage, the role is a multiplied effect. When you're both doing this, you spend a lot more time like actually dreaming, moving forward, raising healthy kids, that sort of thing, than you do just like inwardly imploding, as time goes. So I think that empathy thing is massive, honestly, though. Even err on the side of empathy and, empathy, self-empathy. And I know some people are like, if you have that, I have that personality. I do. And so I've spent 50 years of my life driving myself into the ground. You know what I mean? So you're like, you got to be hard. I'm like, save it. Like I've been there and I've accomplished some things because of it, but at what cost? There have probably been broken relationships that didn't need to be broken. There have probably been misunderstandings, that didn't need to happen. There probably have been, personal dissatisfaction that I didn't need to experience, disillusionment by myself or others that didn't really need to happen.
Yeah.
And so, you got some stuff done, but was there a sense of peace and joy through the whole process and the retaining of some of the most valuable relationships you've had in your life?
Yeah.
And when you're hard charging, it's easy just kind of torch relationships, and not all relationships stay forever. They're not supposed to.
Yeah.
But it's it's just easy to torch a relationship and move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so I would say work on learning empathy, and there's you can develop it as a muscle to where, here's the thing. I will tell you this about the parrots, just true story. I walked up to him, introduced myself, never met him before in person, never even talked to him before. Everything that was arranged was done, via personnel and assistants and admins and my wife a little bit of time years ago because we had them scheduled pre-COVID. That's how long we've been working on this sort of thing. Okay, so I've never met him. And I walk up to him very first time and to shake their hands, introduce myself, and like, hey, so glad to meet you. Glad you're here. Welcome. We shoot the breeze for a little bit. And within 10 minutes of the conversation, Les Parrott looks at me and goes, hey, so how's the church going? Of course, every pastor's like, oh, great. Blessed and highly favored, brother. You know what I mean? Whatever. And then he goes, what's your greatest challenge right now? That's an empathetic question. And I'm like, that's why I love a good counselor, a good therapist, a good, a good empathetic person. Because they just come out of the gate going, share with me something that I could empathize with you. And honestly, I was like, well, we have challenges like everybody else, but honestly, and I wasn't evading, I was just like, honestly, there's nothing that I'm trying to think. And he's just like, well, I guess if you can't come up with something immediately, that's probably a good sign. And I was like, yeah. And we were just off from there. Yeah. Like relationally. And you can always tell, like, empathy is just attractive. Like immediately I'm like, here's this guy who's all over the world, and he doesn't, and I don't know what he's going to be like. Because sometimes I've had guests that are like, man, they don't have much personality off the platform, very few, because we're really careful about who we, partner with. Because we want authentic people, real deal people, Jesus loving, but I just thought, man, within about 10 minutes, this dude's already forging empathetic relationship. To be, and again, I could say, well, he knows I'm a pastor and he knows that there are challenges, and it's kind of shooting fish in a barrel. He knows, it's like, I'm not the random dude at the bus stop, but, I just think it's so powerful. And immediately, like, these walls come down, conversations start happening, just simple, hey, how's that make you feel? Just a well-placed, it's not just, I'm sorry. It's like, it's just a well-placed, how are you feeling about that? You know, and letting a person just share their perspective. And what we would call it, he talked about, you know, diving into the ocean for the person. What Dane and I would call it, and amongst others, is we didn't originate, but it's crawling into the well.
Yeah.
You know, our approach many times is, I need to get you out of the well as quickly as possible. If you're hurting in a marriage, you know, if you're mad, if you're sad, I got to get you out of this well. Come on, let's go shopping. Come on, let's, you know, let's whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll fix you dinner. I'll whatever. And we do these things to get the other person out of the well. And really what we're trying to do is pacify our own discomfort with their discomfort. Many times. Like, I'll do this for you, so I'm not uncomfortable anymore. I'm not really thinking about you right now. I'm thinking about me, and so I'll blow the budget, take you shopping, because I don't want to be uncomfortable because you're uncomfortable. You're unhappy right now,
right?
And so when that's me trying to get you out of it. But when I'm just like, I'm gonna crawl in the well with you and just sit with you for a few minutes and be like, this stinks. This is hard. You know, it's okay to be sad. Let's just slow down and feel this for a minute. It's called lamenting, according to the Bible. You know, it's a lament. It's feeling it. It's bringing your complaint even to God. Like, this really stinks. And I think when we do that, it creates empathy. And I think people actually get out of the well on their own at that point. And we're not running around creating, you know, codependent relationships. You know, enmeshed relationships based out of that. That was kind of a long answer, but
good. Let's jump into some very specific questions we got.
Let's do that.
So this one was, from a biblical perspective, what would be the advice to get married with a prenup? If the significant other has a desire to get a prenup, but due to it feeling like we're planning for divorce, I feel uncomfortable. So how do I go about this?
I think you have to go curiosity, heavy curiosity in this question. Like, why? Because if I'm asking for a prenup from someone that I'm saying I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, I don't know that it's wrong in every case. I don't know. But I would want to know why. If somebody, let's say, for instance, I would think this. If somebody were dealing with generational wealth, you know, quite a bit of it, you know, if you're trying to protect your Nissan Maxima, you probably just need to give it up. Okay. But it's modded out. Yeah. Okay. Like, whatever, you know, but if there's a generational wealth where someone's like, hey, I'm kind of protecting what's been passed down for generation to generation to generation, and I want to pass that down to our kids as well. I don't think it's a slam dunk, but I could go, okay, at least I understand the motive. The motive is more about protecting something that is generational than it is about, you don't trust me. Does that make sense? But even then, I'm not saying I would be. I think I would just go strong. This is where curiosity is a superpower in some ways. I mean, it's a secret weapon, because I think in this situation, I'd say, okay, why? You know, and I think you're going to find some answers that are going to tell you what's really going on in that person, that maybe if we address the fear of divorce, the fear of loss. I've worked so hard for this business. And I don't want to lose it. Well, then don't get divorced. You know what I mean? But why do you think you might get divorced? And it's a very real thing. But I would probably and you're probably going to need some outside help of a counselor at some point, because it's going to probably you're touching a very emotionally charged area in somebody when you ask them that question. And I actually had a scenario where somebody came to me and they were getting a prenup. It was sort of a generational wealth kind of thing. Later on in life, first marriage, and so, you know, and it created like problems. And so I just said, well, have you asked, like, hey, help me understand. Let's just set this on the table and just talk to me about this. And it was very much like, you know, I just think you're planning for divorce. Okay, I'm not. But I have this generational thing. But then as the story went on, this person like, the spouse actually happened to work in a legal field, you know, and saw, like in attorney's firms, saw men divorcing their wives, constantly running off with younger women, and they had prenups, and so the wife was out with like next to nothing. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, bing, 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 bing. There's the fear. Because she, in this case, has seen it happen. And so we're going to need to work through this together
Yeah.
because it could become a root of bitterness for somebody if
Yeah.
like, okay, fine, I'll sign it. But the question is always going to be like when a fight happens, you know, oh, you've been planning this all along. Like you want a divorce, and there you are. It's like rejection, speaking to rejection. So I would just say, I don't think there's a biblical, you know, I mean, if you go to biblical, I mean, there were dowries that returned to it was very much about family land. And I mean, honestly, the way the marriages were set up, there were times where there were contracts written like, we're going to give you the land, but we get it back if you divorce. But it wasn't the person, it was the family.
Yeah.
So I'm not using that as a proof for, you know, prenups.
Yeah.
But I would just say this. I'd say I would just go strong curiosity with that relationship. Go like, help me understand, and maybe get a counselor to walk with you through this. And then at the end of the day, you may do it, you may not, but it won't be a point of contention between you from that point. Or you can just get married poor. That's the other thing. Just be broke. You know, you always love the people that are poor getting prenups because like one day I'm gonna make it. What if I win the lottery? Yeah, like you just you're probably not. Probably not going to happen.
Relax. Yeah.
Simmer down and just keep your Maxima. So it's good.
You modded out Maxima in your apartment. You're killing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Okay. So this person said, I am married by the JOP to my husband.
Just of the peace. Yeah. Okay.
However, this is both of our second marriages. My husband was married by the Catholic Church in his first marriage, and the Catholic Church says he's still married to his first wife. And they said that we need to petition to the Vatican. So how do I approach this, or doesn't it even matter since neither one of us are Catholics anymore?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I'm not, nor have ever been Catholic, per se. So I'm not deeply an expert in Catholicism. But here's what I would say about this. I don't know the situations surrounding your marriages or remarriages. Here's what I do think. And I don't want to go into a really deep, crazy answer on this deal, but I will. So I think what happened. So Catholicism became was the original kind of church, right? And then you have the Protestant Reformation in the 1500s. And it is because so there was this in Catholicism historically. What I think probably began pure in the Apostolic Fathers and whatever, as time went on, growth, and then there becomes political alliances, and now the church has authority, temporal authority, meaning land, and it started to corrupt things with people. And in that corruption, it led to a high control and financial. So here's all I'm saying about this. I'm not knocking the Catholic Church. We all got our issues. Here's what I'm saying though. The Catholic Church requires you to be the part of the church even for salvation, from my understanding. Like you have to take communion, you have to be baptized in the church. What I find very interesting in the Catholic Church is they believe they can affect your eternal destiny even after you're dead. We can pray you out of this place and pray you into this place and all this, which I think is so not biblical and interesting. Sure. Okay, this is where the Protestant Reformation came into play because, like, no, there's some things that are extra biblical that you're applying here. And I'm not trying to make my Catholic friends mad, but do your research of history. Okay, so here's what I would say. Like in the Catholic Church, like the church was how you maintained your salvation. This is why I got to go to Easter for communion. I got to go do confession. I got to do those things. The Protestant Reformation comes along, and now we're like, no, it's by faith alone, that you are saved, which is, I believe, okay? And I don't think that Catholics don't believe that. I just think they think you have to do all these other things, which then you go, well, then is it really by faith if I have to do all these other things, you know? And some would say, well, you do these things because of faith, but whatever. But Jesus modeled this, and through the New Testament, they teach this concept of, salvation is a gift of God through faith alone. So here's what we've done. Here's how this, how is this relevant to the question? In the Protestant Reformation, this swing of pendulum from this control of the church to no, it's me and Jesus, play that out over 1,500 or 1,000 years, roughly, another 900 years to where we are today. We become independent, individualized. This is why Protestants don't think they need the church for anything. They think that I shouldn't say Protestants. There are some who are of the Protestant faith, like, I don't need the church, I'll just love God.
Right.
And so the pendulum has swung from like this complete control of the church to like, I don't even need the
Right.
church. It's just me and Jesus and, out in the field, worshiping.
Yeah.
And I'm like, both those extremes, here's where I go to, extremes are wrong. So there needs to be some, not control of the church,
Yeah.
but there is a role of the church.
Right.
Oh, that was good. There's a role of the church. So in this point, do I think the church tells you you're still married to the first person? If you're legally divorced, you're legally divorced. I think, I don't know the circumstances surrounding that. You may have biblical grounds for that divorce.
Right.
But even if you didn't, you are where you are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that Scripture teaches. Paul actually talks about, to those who come to Christ, let them just stay as they are. So, if you're circumcised, stay that way. If you're stay. Like, you don't have to. And again, reiterating, it's faith. It's not your actions. So I wouldn't say to somebody like, well, you need to divorce your current husband and go back to your first husband. That's, and again, we live in a very broken, messy world.
Yeah.
That we have to try to do the best we can.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the best you can do right now, especially if you're no longer Catholic, is to go, Lord, we submit all this to you, and we're going to live a godly marriage, honoring you for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
We've learned together in that regard.
That's
all
good.
of that to say, I don't think you're still married to your first husband or first wife in that regard.
That's it. There you go.
So,
that's the
giddy
answer.
up. All of that to say, you're good.
Yes. If you missed the message yesterday, there is a link in the description. It was a wonderful one. A wonderful one from Dr. Leslie Parrott, the male Leslie Parrott.
How trippy is that? You marry someone with the same first name as you.
Yeah. Did you know that? Leslie and Leslie.
Yeah.
Their sons. And he's the third.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Their sons' middle names are all Leslie. And
Yeah. But if you missed it, it'll be in the description. Thanks for hanging out with us. And we will be here again next week in the green room.
Right on.
We'll see you soon.